Welcome to today's lecture. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to continue on where we left off. This is a light that we had. We used this to create a rim light, and if I look at my lights, that's the kind of rim light I have. And I'll tone it down, play it up, whatever I need to do to get it to work correctly. You see my render size is a bit smaller. Under options, under test resolution, you can change your test resolution to a smaller size so that it goes quicker. You can also go to render settings, go to quality, and lower this overall quality to make this go quicker too. Obviously it's going to be kind of not nice, but it'll take 6 seconds to render instead of a minute per frame while we're testing things out. We also have our camera in the scene. I also have my texture on here. I did add a little bit of, I changed this to a reflective paint, and I modified some of the settings on it. You could have also just done a reflective plastic or reflective anisotropic. That would have worked too. I was just trying things out, seeing what it looked like. I also came down here to bump, and I added a bump. If I want to delete the one I have there, let me just show you how to make a bump on stuff. So I'm going to assign a Mila to this. I'm going to go to my overall bump and click the little map. You have to open up this material properties. And then on here, I need to add what's called a 2D bump node. So it's under 2D utilities, bump 2D. So if I click on that, it'll create this bump 2D node. And this is how much it's going to bump. So if I set this to 0.05, it'll be a very, very little bump. And usually I just type it in and not use a wheel or the thing because this is just too much. And all my numbers are usually between 0 and 1 or -1 and +1. Now the bump value, this is where I need to tell it where to bump, because this is how much it's bumping, this is where it's going to bump. So if I click on this little map here for the bump value, clear my little flag here, and type in file, that's where I can load in my file. So I have my rusty metal color, and that's it. Now you can see now I just have a flat color on there, and you can see that I'm getting some sort of bump. Now I did go into my place 2D texture and make sure that this matched the repeats on my other material. So this is 5 and 5, or maybe 10 and 10. Okay. I could also go into my file and turn off this filter. And what that does is you see how it got rid of some of the grain when it had that filter on? Well, I want that grain in there. So I like to turn these filters off. Okay? So that's how you would add a bump to your stuff. I'm just going to go back and assign my existing lettering Mila. And I'm going to go down and make sure that my stuff is set to filter type off. Hit the back button. Oops, just click on it. Go to here. Go to the file. Set that off. Good. Okay. So that's where we left off at. So now what we want to do is we want to go through and start adding in some other lights. So right now it looks like this from my render cam. I want to have some more lights inside here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another area light. And the neat thing about area lights is they don't have to be square. They're hip to be square, but they don't have to be. So attribute editor, same junk we played with before, intensity, maybe 500, quadratic. Under the mental ray area light, say yes, high samples of 1. And here's where I can change the shape to a disc, which would be round, like a light would be. So we're trying to emulate a police light happening on this side over here. So if I were to take this and just rotate it, woo, 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 like that, it would work. So I'm going to drop it like it's hot. I'm going to put it right here. Okay. Now in order to get the red color, if you look, there's a color. I click on the color, I click on the red. This is official police red, so I think that's good enough. And then of course we want to test it out. Now what we don't want to do is have this red flash across the entire thing. In the example one, they have it kind of hit part of it. So right now it's hitting like way too much. So I don't want to pull the red down, I'm going to pull the intensity down. So maybe like 150. So imagine like a big circle around my light. That's where I want to make sure that I'm kind of hitting it on there. 75. Okay, and that intensity is how far it's going to go from the light. I could also pull the light back, and I may start doing that as well. Something like that. Still aiming it at the Macomb, but just having it moved over a bit. There we go. So see how it's just lighting up this one side right here. And then I can go in and duplicate that. And I'm going to pull it back. And I'm going to rotate it slightly like this. And then what this is going to do is this is going to give me kind of like a triangle of lights. So red and then blue. So we'll go to the official police blue. Sure, something like that. And then we'll have another triangle of light right there. Okay, so now if I take all three of these and I just hit Control G to group them, it puts all three lights together. So now I can just go to Modify and Center Pivot this. Where are you? There you are. And then I could rotate this setup here. So I'm going to go to this and say Light Setup. Red, blue, and white, RBW. Alright, so now if I want to see what the white's going to look like, I'll just rotate it so the white's pointing at it. And then hit the render button again. Oops, that's the blue. Because I never changed the original color of this one to white. Quick way to change it, you just pull it down, pull it back up, it's white. Alright, so now, that's barely hard to see. Now it's white. And then if I grab my group again, now remember I can't just marquee these because it'll rotate them individually, not in their group. I have to go to Window Outliner, I have to click on my group, and then I can rotate that group. And then see what the blue is going to look like from here. There we go. So now we have the red, the white, and the blue. And I may even, just to have this seem a little bit more like possible kind of thing, I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. Like that. Oops. Before I do that, let me undo my group rotation here. Just going to reset the group's rotation. And then the first light, which is at, let's say, 26. The next light will be at 90 plus 26, so you can get your calculators out. I think it's like 116 or negative 116. Nope, it's totally off. Probably 106. Oops, sorry. This is positive, and I need to spin it around the other way. That's why. So, let me get my calculator out. And I will just, let's just do it the easy way. Just forget all that nonsense. Let's reset this to 0. There we go. And then I'll rotate this one to negative 90. And then position it. Okay, I'm creating a block basically. And I'll rotate this one to positive 90 should work. Yep, there we go. Put that there. And then I'll duplicate this. Rotate it here to 180. There we go. This doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's close. We should be good. Alright, so now we should have this color being red. This color should be white. So I'm just going to set that to white. This color being blue. So I'll set this to blue. And this color being white. So red, white, blue, white. Red, white, blue, white. Okay, so now I can grab that group and I could spin it around. Now what I want to see also is, here's this, right? So here's one of my colors. I think white. Yep. And there's a hint of blue. If you can look right here, you can kind of see a little bit of blue popping on the scene. And as I pull this around, we'll see full blue. And we might see a little bit of white on this other side. Okay? So what I want to do is just a little test to see what that's going to look like. And this is just a common thing that we would do. Now, if I go and render this out, each frame is going to take 4 seconds, but it could save us a lot of time just rendering out this little trial of what this is going to look like. So I'm going to go to my render settings up here. Leave my quality really low. I'm going to go to my common tab, and I'm going to call this test lighting. And I'm going to say OpenEXR, wonderful. Zips, sure. Name.number.extension, the third one, 1, 2, 3 down. My frames, I'll just do it to 90. That should be plenty of time to test that out. And then my render cam is where I want to render it through. Okay. Now I haven't actually set up anything on this animation, so right now it'd just be a still as far as the light goes and the camera zooming in. So what I want to do is set up a little animation on this thing. Okay. So I'm testing 2 things. 1, what does the light look like? And 2, how fast should this move? So I'm going to rewind this to the beginning. I'm going to right click on my groups, rotate Y, and key it. There we go. I'm going to go to the end of my animation, and I'm going to set this to, I don't know. I want it to spin this way, like that. Oops, let me center pivot this again. I want to rotate it this way. Okay, so that's in the negative, so the correct way I'm rotating it is going in the negative. So I'll just do negative, like, I don't know, 1200. And then I'll key that. Okay, so now if we just watch it, alright, we should get a good sampling of reds and blues in there. Now what I don't want to do is it looks like it's slowing down, so I'm going to fix that too. I'm going to go to Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And if I click on the Rotate Y here and hit F, it'll frame this curve. And if you look at it, it looks like it's kind of like plateaued here, straight line, and then plateaued. I'm just going to click this linear button right there. And that will make sure that this spins in a perfect circle. Okay, so now I'll save my file. Yes. And I will do a batch render. And I'm going to let this go and get those frames out. Now, because it's 6 seconds a frame, I could pull up my calculator and say 6 seconds a frame times 90 frames is 540 seconds. And if I divide that by 60, I'll get how many minutes. So it'll take about 9 minutes for me to test this out. Okay, and it may even go a bit faster because I'm rendering it through my batch and not through just this window, because this window does go a bit slower. So I'm just going to click on here, and we'll wait for this thing to get done rendering, and then we can check it out. And that's why I don't play guitar for a living. Okay, so we're almost done. Frame 88, frame 89. So you can see it's just a matter of waiting. And this waiting will definitely pay off if we do it early enough in the game and can see iterations of this thing. So it's a good thing like, hey, I'm going to go take a potty break or go get a drink or whatever. Set it to render, check out where you're at, see what things are looking like. And then when you come back, you have a pretty reasonable amount of time to see where you're at in this game. It also gives you a good idea of how long your stuff is going to take. Obviously, this is lower settings, but still, if you raise your settings up, it's going to take obviously a lot longer. So while we are finishing this up, just keep and D drive here, 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 here. All right, so double click the first one. This opens in DJV. If you're at home, obviously you'd have to download DJV Player. Alright, so it looks okay, but what I'm seeing is that we're getting this really weird line going across it. And that's something we want to find out, obviously, ahead of time. So that line is a result of our area light right there. Alright, so what we're going to do, we're going to jump back to Maya. And I'm in my perspective view still. So if I click on this light here, just so you can see, this light, is, even though it's a circle, it actually extends beyond this. And so what's happening is, as it hits this corner here, like that, this edge is like hitting right on top of that. And so it's like basically just creating a white. It looks kind of weird. So if I switch my area lights to spotlights, okay, can do that to all of them. Spotlight. Spotlight. Okay, so now these are spotlights, but you'll see they still have this like weird cone shape on there. On the spotlight itself, I can say make this an area light, make it a disc. And if I still get that same little weird glitchy thing, then I can just turn that off. So if I go here, I go to where it's obvious, okay? So I go to frame, right there. This is 218. What frame am I on? Alright, if I look at my images here, I'll be able to see which one it is. It's probably further down like this. Too far. Probably right there. 67 or 68. Okay. We could have done some math to figure that out, but I'm trying to go easy on you a bit. So if I go to 267, and we go back to our render cam, and we render this out from the render cam, right click, render cam, we can see that there's definitely no line happening now. And just to be safe, I can go back a frame, render. Okay, so now we're getting the look that we want, where we just have the blue and red coloring popping in. Now we wouldn't have found that had we just gone with the spotlights or we hadn't gone with the rendering in the first place. Okay, so it's always good to do that. Now, a couple settings on a spotlight here is we still have the quadratic, we still have the intensity settings, but we have these other things like cone angle, penumbra angle, and drop off. So I'm going to grab all the lights, because over here I can adjust all of those. So if I go to cone angle, you'll see that it makes the cones bigger. Okay, so maybe 80, that should be good. I'm going to do a little penumbra angle, and that'll just soften this edge right here. And then drop off, I'll do like 1. I don't have too much drop off on there. I'm also going to take the intensity up to like 120. When I switch it to a spotlight, it actually behaves a little bit different than an area light would. So just to test things out again, let's jump back to a frame where we're actually spotlighting on something. Jump to our render view, and then render it out. And just see if we're getting a nice blue or red or whatever color we're hitting this with. That looks like a pretty decent blue. Okay? Cool. Cool, cool, cool. So lighting, this part is good. I think what I want to do is also have maybe just like this random flashing light on the other side. So I'm going to add a spotlight here. And what I want it to look like is that there's a light source that's just flickering. So I'm going to make this cone angle pretty big. Like that. Make it quadratic still. Take this up to maybe 500. Maybe make the penumbra angle, let's make it 12 here, just so we have a nice soft edge. And then for the drop off, I'll go with 2. There we go. Too much drop off and you really lose it. Still going to go with area light. Disc shape is good. Everything else should be good here. These high samples and low samples we can set to 1 for now. Alright. So unlike the other light, I don't want this one to rotate in a circle. What I want to do is basically just like flash it on, flash it off. like a flickering light. Okay, so first let's test it out and see what it's looking like. All right, that looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is just go to the intensity here and set some keyframes. So I'm going to go right click, key selected, I'll go to the end of this, right click, key selected, and then just randomly throughout, I'm just going to key selected on that, just to set it to 500. Okay, so maybe I'll make, I don't know, a few keys here. I don't want it to be very stroby, so I'm just making a few keys. So now I'm going to go kind of like right before this and set it to 0. Maybe not 0. That seems a little bit too less. So it was 1500 or 500 before. 500 before. So I'll set it to maybe like 100. So we're not going totally off, but there obviously will be some sort of enhancement. So this is going to go to 100. I'm going to go over here, put this one at 100. And this is, again, just something I'm trying out just to see. What should happen is our light should go from 500 to 100 to 500 to 100 to 500 to 100. Okay? And I'm not being too precise with this because I want it to look kind of organically. I don't want it to be like perfectly set up. Okay, so now if I were, I'm going to save this. If I hit 7 on here, I should be able to see my lighting. Okay, it's not perfect quality, but I can still see it. It may crap out. I can always swap to this other legacy default viewport, and sometimes that will give you better results. In this case, it's not. So now if I hit play, we can get actually a preview of what's happening. Okay, so this white light is actually like fading in, fading out. I don't want it to fade in and fade out. Okay, what I want to do is see it kind of flicker on and off. So before these whites, or before it drops down, I'm going to go a couple frames before and set it back to 500. A couple frames before this one. And if I don't go, I don't want to go right before it, because if I go right before it, then I will get like a shutting off that's a little bit too drastic, possibly. Come on. There we go. Okay, so now if we watch it, you can see how we're getting more of a flickering. Okay, so I'm going to go into my graph editor for this light, animation editor, graph editor, hit the intensity, hit P or F, and you'll see that my curves right now are just like, here it is at 500, here it is at 100. Okay, so it's going to be at 500, 500, then 100, and 500, 500, 100, 551, 551, 551. So what I can do is grab these, and I'm just going to hit this button here. And you'll see that it makes this neat graph, okay, where the light's actually going to get pretty intense and then drop off. Get pretty intense, drop off. Pretty intense, drop off. Okay, so that looks like a pretty decent text. Now, again, I'm going to save this rendering. Go back to my render cane. Come back to here, like that. Let me hit the render button, because I want to see what it's going to look like from the actual camera when the lights are all the way up. So there it says Macomb. Switch this over here. I'm going to go up a little bit further. All right, now we got the red light on there. Let's see what that looks like. And these little test renders will really pay off when you're doing your stuff. Okay. Now it's always better to have your stuff maybe a little bit brighter than to have it too dark. 'Cause if it's too dark, you can't like make it brighter because it just looks weird. Let's go to the blue and see what the blue looks like. Right there's the blue. Now let's go and see what it looks like when it's dark. So like at 1, or at when this is at 100, could be a little bit darker, I think. So I'm going to go back to my graph editor. Oops, that's not the graph editor. Here's my light. I'm going to grab all of these values on the bottom, and instead of setting them to 1, I'm going to set them to 20. And so now when I render this, what I should get is a pretty dark left side. It's darker than it was. And that should be better, okay? Give us a little more contrast to work with, especially when we go from being that dark to being that bright. There we go. And then what I think I want to do too, let me see which light this is. This is the white. So these are the two whites, and then these are the two red and blue. So what I think I want to do is just take these two whites and maybe scale them in a bit, and then move these in a little bit more. That'll just give me a little bit different look to my light. So I get basically like less white light. I could also take these cones up. So cone angle, make that 90. Take the intensity up to like 150. Grab these guys, make their cone angle or their intensities like 60. That's too little. 75, and their cone angle is like 60. Okay, so I should get maybe a little bit more red and blue in there, a little bit less white. Okay. Now, if I look at this and see that it's spinning maybe a little bit too slow, that's definitely something I want to correct. So if I go to my outliner, click on my light group, go to the graph editor. This is where we tweak all of our animations. Hit F. And so this value is basically at 178. It's at negative 1200 degrees. So I'm just going to double this, negative 2400. Set it off screen. Hit play again. There we go. So maybe that'll work. Okay. And again, once we render it out, we'll get a better view of what's happening inside here. We may need to render it out a couple times. So here's my render cam. I can look at this and see what it's doing. Macomb. Do a couple test renders. See what that looks like at different views. If I need to adjust any of my intensities, definitely adjust my intensities. Maybe this is 4800. Just want to knock it down a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit too bright on the background. Still too bright. Let's go with 4000. All right, that's better. I'm going to go to the attribute editor for my material, and I'm going to pull my glossy color up some. There we go. And also go to my flakes and pull that color up some too. That's too much. I'm going to switch this instead of a reflective paint. I'm just going to go anisotropic. This is just more of a metal material. So you just get the metal, and we just get this glossy blend here, and then the glossy roughness there. So I'm going to make this reasonably sharp. Okay, and now you can see how we're picking up more of that highlight from our light. So let me just pull that glossy blend down, pull this up a bit. There we go. So now it's starting to really pop. We're starting to get some really nice values here. Pull that down, pull this up. There we go. So that should be good. Now again, just to test it out, because now we've changed our material, I should go up a bit. There it's in red. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then around here it's in blue. Oops, maybe not. There it is. Too far. Cool. All right. So now what we're going to need to do is render this out. So I'm going to save, yes, render settings, make sure I'm on my render cam, make sure I'm going 960 by 540. 1 through, this case is going to be my end frame. So whatever your end frame is, pick your end frame. This will be render underscore 01. Okay, that way we know this is our first rendering that we're going to be doing with this. Under quality, we can crank up the quality to 2. I do want to set up some other stuff that we'll be playing with. So under scenes, under passes, I want to turn on ambient occlusion, and then just set this max distance to, I don't know, maybe 2 or 5. Set it to 5. Okay. And then just so you can see what this ambient occlusion is going to do, when we render this out, what we're going to have is obviously a longer render time, but we'll have this black and white image stored inside of our EXR that we could play with. Alright, so once it gets done rendering, sometimes you can access it from the render pass here. It'll show it because it's a render pass. Other times you have to go into your images folder and there's a temp folder. Okay, now temp folder, every time we render, it goes here. So this is my rendering I just did because I called it render underscore 01. So it names it render underscore 01. And then 61 is the frame. You see 61 is the frame I'm on. So I double click. And there's the frame that we just saw. Now if I go to File, Layer, Ambient Occlusion, this is what it's going to look like. And what this allows us to do is create some darkness in some of these areas. So you'll see when we get it into our final comp how neat this is going to look. Alright, so now we're all set with that. Let me save. Good. And then we're just going to set this thing to render. So we go to render, we go to batch render, option box, make sure our render threads are off, set this to, at the school, set it to at least 12, or at least 8, I guess. On mine I only have 4, so I set it to 4. It usually does a good enough job while it's doing that. Alright, so once it gets kicked off, down here on the bottom, it'll say rendering with mental ray. And we'll wait for this to actually do its thing, where it says I'm actually going to render this now. And we're going to right click and go to the task manager, go to the processes tab, find my batch. It's going to be the one eating up the most CPU. So right now I'm at 94, 91, 92% of the CPU. Right click, set priority below normal. Yes. Close. And because this rendering is going to take obviously a lot longer, you should definitely make sure you go through and look at the rendering after you get that first frame and verify that, hey, that is the right frame. So here's the first frame. It's at 95%. I wait till it's done. I double click it. It opens it up. Everything's cool. I leave it and let it go. There it is. And it is flickering because I have the other thing on there. That's fine. Cool. All right. So, so that's rendering. Now, while that's rendering, I can open up my Firefox or Chrome or whatever. Again, I can go through and find pictures I need. So I need a picture of smoke, right? Oops. Let me go to textures.com first. That's my first stop for everything. I just like to go to textures.com. It's like the Walmart of textures, except nothing is imported from kids and factories. I typed in Walmart. Smoke. Okay, so here we get, oh, cigarettes, gross. Smoke, smoke, smoke. Little puffs of smoke here. That kind of smoke there, more smoke here. I think I wanted to look a little bit more specifically at like clouds. And I want to find the assets I'm going to use for my scene. So stuff like this, excuse me, yeah, I'm above the clouds. I don't want that. I'm kind of like in the clouds. That's the look I want to go for here. So something where we're like at basically like eye level with clouds, like that would be probably a good picture. I need to log in so I can get my stuff. I decided to open with Photoshop just so it doesn't go to my downloads folder, so I can put it exactly where I want it to go. Okay, so anything that we need for that compilation, we obviously need to make sure we have all that stuff for it. So now we get to play and kind of find the stuff that we would want to put inside there. I think this is kind of a neat shot of just a skyline, because in the imagery there is like a skyline in the background. I think I want to do night also. Night sky. Not that. There we go. So something like this I could start with, just to have a nice little backdrop. And I think I like this one. That sun's gonna be a little bit too distracting. All right, and then I can look up skyline. Maybe something like that. So this is just the part of just collecting your assets, getting your assets together. Even if I liked a building, like I like that building, let's say, I could cut that building out of this one and put it in my own, right? So we're going to let it render. We're going to collect our assets. This is kind of a neat sky too. All right, so I have that sky there. I made just airburst that out so I don't have the sun rays. I'm done with that. I have those clouds. I have this. I have that. I have that. All right, so let me jump back to Google and let's see, smoke blowing movie. Go to videos and under search tools, nope, under more, search tools, there it is, any source, no videos. There should be a thing that says usage rights. Well, where's for that? Now, even I think smoke is just fine. Odd that smoke weed every day, smoke ping, smoke background, smoke detector, smoke signals. Odd. So I could find something like this, or like this, or like that. The idea with the smoke one is that I can't find anything that's washed out too much like this one. That's like way too much. I can't find anything on the background like that because it's a bit harder to remove. But I could animate one of these things moving inside my scene and make it look like it's doing it. Okay. I can also go to a website called videasy.com. And here they have free stuff, so I can go find smoke. Well, it's clouds they have in the background. Okay, so here's the mist. These ones up here are sponsored by Shutterstock. I don't want those because they have to pay for them. I want the free ones down here. So here's some smoke. There we go. So that's a pretty decent smoke. And all we have to do is just give Digital Meals credit if we use something like that. Okay, so I'm going to download it. We'll automatically download 5, 3, 2, 1, blast off. And I'll save that. Okay, so I'm just trying to collect anything I may want to use for that final image. Here's those are the sponsored ones. Here's another one. And of course you can do your own smoke. I think this one's probably going a bit too fast. Well, at the beginning it is. Yeah, I think I'm good with the other one. Alright, I can always come back and find some more stuff. Alright, so that's where we're going to leave this. I have my images. I've saved these together with my movie. This thing is still rendering out. I'm at frame 10. So I'm just going to let it go, and we'll pick it up next time when all this is done.